Hello, welcome to CSC 353. We're walking through the steps required as a part of Service Redundancy Part 2. This hands-on portion is the 2.2 assignment where you'll set up service redundancy for a DNS server that you will complete and provision or set up in your local network. So if you have your own DNS server, this service can be used to enhance the efficiency and security of your local network. But for that reason, there's a critical dependency. One thing we want to do is set up a redundancy using a common feature in most of our local networks, DHCP. If you've already taken up some of the tasks for the DNS server solution and you've established an IP address that's fixed at this point, we're going to ask you to change that. So the first thing we'll want you to do is to power off your DNS server and select the settings for that system while it's powered down and it's not running. We'll want you to uncheck the box for Enable the Network Adapter. We're going to be changing some settings and we need to reference the IP address range in your wireless router. When you do this, you should find that browsing the internet or websites doesn't happen well. So that would be your first indication. If your server is being used for local DNS, you may end up seeing this. But if you do, don't worry about it. It'll be back up shortly. This is a view of my own local Wi-Fi router, and I'm in the LAN settings on the DHCP page where dynamic addresses are assigned to connected clients. And what I want to do is see whether or not there's a previous address associated with my DNS machine. And if that's true, we want to remove that and get rid of it. So after we've powered off the machine and disabled the adapter and removed a previous setting in our Wi-Fi router, and that's only if there was a previous setting for your DNS server and your Wi-Fi router, what we want you to do is to enable the network adapter, and you'll notice that the generate a new random MAC address is available. You want to hold your mouse over that and click it so that it generates a new MAC address. Then we want to reference the IP network address range and identify the highest available IP address for use. We're going to statically assign that to the server, but we're also going to create a manual assignment or DHCP reservation. The reason we're going to do this is if our DNS server happens to update network drivers and that resets our network protocols to a dynamic assignment, the wireless router will know this MAC address and associate it with the available address. So what we're going to do now is manually assign the next step or first step of the process, and this is the first task that you're going to capture in your assignment. You will manually assign, once you start the server, a static IP address and make a note of that MAC address, and then you're going to open a command prompt and type ipconfig /all, and you should see the same MAC address that you see from this previous setting, and you should see the highest IP network address available on your wireless router on the server because you've set it up as a static address. To do that, you open up the IPv4 properties and assign this statically. That's what you do. Once that's done, you should be able to see it on the screen from the command prompt when you issue an IP config. So if you capture this screen and it shows your new MAC address, and you'll notice that I've entered this into a notepad text file. This is going to become really handy in just a moment. So that's one thing you want to do while this is on screen. You want to enter this, but instead of dashes, you're going to put a colon. Going back to your router, you're going to use the manual assignment option to set up that same MAC address that you saw here. So you'll copy and paste this MAC address for the server and put it into this entry. Now your screen may look different how you set up a manual assignment to associate an IP address with a MAC. Sometimes it's called a DHCP reservation or a MAC address reservation. Sometimes it's called a MAC to IP binding, right? You can put the MAC address in, you put in the IP address for a .31, even though that's the highest in the range here, enter a DNS setting and a host name, and then you save it. What should happen after you make that change? So in the second part of your assignment, you're going to go back onto the server and change it so that you'll simulate conditions for network interface failure on the critical DNS machine. So your local network depends on your DNS server for DNS, and that's because you want control over DNS. But that means everything that's connected in your home, in your local network, depends on that DNS. If you run updates on your virtual machine and the server happens to load a driver update for the network interface, it could reset the network interface back to defaults or dynamic. And what we want to do is manually do this to see if the reservation or manual assignment will work. So we're testing to see if this manual assignment and the MAC address will work. So we change our setting in the server to show dynamic. And so this is what we want you to do. We want you to take a screenshot of this as part of the second artifact you'll submit. You're showing how the reservation will work to save the day as a redundancy for your service, your critical service. And this is the first piece, or the first element of the second submission you need to make for this assignment. You want to show that your server address has been changed to dynamic. On the next screen, when you open up a command prompt and then type in ipconfig renew, it'll kick it out of the static mode, the static assignment that was in there before, and it'll automatically look for a dynamically assigned address. So when the renew command is finished running, what you should see is this same IP address. If you capture this screen and add it to this screen, that's all you need for the second part of your 2.2 assignment. So this proves that in the worst case scenario, if an update changes the settings of your DNS machine and it defaults to a dynamic mode, so the network interface doesn't use a static address, your Wi-Fi router has this setting, and it works when you put it in dynamic mode and use the ipconfig renew mode. It's going to pull an automatic address, and you see here it's pulled 31. So that's proof that this setting in the router works. And when you change it to dynamic, simulating an unwanted change, then this will happen. So that's the only thing you have to submit. Now you can submit for additional credit. What you want to do is actually go back into your server and put the static assignment back in there. It's best to configure a static network address for any systems or servers in your network that connected devices depend on. And if your local network is using the DNS from your server, the one you set up in VirtualBox for the solution, you'll want it to take up a fixed IP address all the time and reference the gateway address. Now in your home environment, these numbers may vary. You also want to make sure that the DNS server points to itself for its own DNS. In addition to Cloudflare or Google, you can put 1.1.1.1 or 8.8.8.8. This is just something you can do for additional credit. So you can capture this screen and paste that into your submission below the heading that says additional credit. And then it's just a good practice. You would want to open the DNS management console, clear the cache, and restart the service as we demonstrated in class. So whenever you are working with DNS, you want to, if you ever make changes, you want to clear the cache and then use the all tasks option, and it'll pull down to restart. This concludes part 2 of service redundancies. I remain available if your screen, if your Wi-Fi router has different options or it's confusing, don't hesitate to shoot an email or a text message so we can schedule a time to share the screen and get you through it. Thanks for joining us.